You're listening to the Ecosystem Approach show. I'm Jason.
And I'm Patricia. Tune in every Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time and 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Transformation Talk Radio.
We discovered that human potential is severely limited when you program humans like a machine, which is standard practice today for self-improvement.
The Ecosystem Approach teaches you how to uncover your infinite potential by using natural methods that are truly revolutionary. Join us now for the Ecosystem Approach show. Today, we're going to talk about having perspective. This is an essential ability to have to be successful in the world and be able to overcome your life's challenges and difficulties. By the way, that was me changing my perspective. Not easy. We'll talk about using perspective in all areas from data analysis to health and relationships. How's your perspective? Stay tuned. We are married intuitives with over 20 years experience who created the Ecosystem Approach for you. This is much different because we see human beings as ecosystems, well, that need to be restored instead of programmed. We show you how to take an energy approach for internal discovery that is rational, practical, and useful for everyday life. Jason, can you define perspective?
Yeah, and it's kind of an egghead definition. It says the ability of someone to take into consideration and potentially understand the interpretation, outlooks, and actions of their self. That was from psychology.
Okay.
So up and I found a lot of definitions that weren't really about what we're talking about today.
Okay.
And I just wanted to just have a short note. We're doing a whole series of shows, and this is one of them, about business topics, because we can see that the ecosystem approach is applied perfectly, especially for small business, because a small business is an ecosystem. And using these, understanding energy and understanding perspective and all these things are very, very valuable in the day-to-day operation of a business.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about data analysis today. And if you don't care about data analysis, this is still a really important show, because we're going to talk about relationships and health and everything in your life that you need perspective for.
Okay.
So let's start.
Okay.
Perspective does not come from an intellectual ability. Now, we think perspective is,
right.
The smarter you are, the greater your perspective, right?
Yes.
And we look to the business leaders often, like an Elon Musk or I don't know if Bill Gates anymore. He's kind of old, but the guy from Apple, Steve Jobs, who died, but we look to him for perspective.
Correct.
And so we think of an intellectual ability because these guys are really smart and
sure,
kind of genius-like, but it's not an intellectual ability. It's a primarily intuitive, and the source of your perspective comes from your essence or your soul. We use the words essence.
Right.
And it comes from the ability to perceive energy and how it affects you, which also comes from essence.
Okay.
Perspective is always personal, and we're going to talk some more about that in the next segment.
Good.
Which seems strange because we think of perspective as something objective.
We do.
And left brain thinkers
only left.
Yes.
In other words, it's kind of like categorized in its own category.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
but you and I both know that's not true.
Well, a great example, and you might have heard this if you've been listening for a while. You might have heard this story before.
Sure.
But when my first wife, who was my daughter's mother, she died of cancer, Hodgkin's disease. 7 years later, we were traveling and we were away from home, and my daughter complained of not being able to breathe. So we took her to emergency, and I remember the doctor throwing up the X-ray on the X-ray box, and we were in the hallway of this small community hospital. So it was really small, and it's not like there was a waiting room or something.
Sure.
Everyone was standing around the hall, and he put up this X-ray, and I saw that X-ray before because it looked exactly like what my wife had
When her cancer was discovered.
when her cancer was discovered, which she
Mhm.
eventually died from.
Yes.
Now, fast forward, we went to some of the, we went to Stanford, and one of the best pediatric
Oncologist.
oncology departments in the world, and the doctor told me there's no relationship. She had the exact same the cancer, which could Hodgkin's disease, which can manifest in different
Areas,
glands
that's
of your
right.
body. It was an exact same place. It was an exact same stage, and he said there's no connection.
Right.
Well, even back then, before I was doing this work, I had the perspective to know that couldn't be true. It wasn't a coincidence like he maintained.
Right.
There was something there. There was some sort of connection
Right.
that my daughter had to her mother and her death.
Right.
And when we told her about it, she said, "Yeah, I always thought I was going to get cancer like my mom,"
Yeah.
which
Well,
of course
boy,
is
did
another
yes.
big hint. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
So perspective, we think perspective is that the smart people, the doctors and the PhDs, are the ones who have the greatest perspective. No, it's not. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
So here's the other thing. Okay. I remember we had a client who worked for a company that if I told you the name, you would recognize it immediately. It's a big company, and they consider themselves a data-driven company.
Correct.
And she told me about how frustrated she was, because she would go into meetings, and these people were trying to figure out the data.
Mhm.
They'd have all this data in front of them, and they try and, what does this mean? What does this mean? She would get it right away. And what she was saying is because she'd get it right away because she was using her intuition.
Yeah.
She was using her essence. And these guys who were looking at the data only, and typically they're left brain focused people.
Right.
The idea that if you're a data-driven company, you're more objective, you have greater insights and those sort
Right.
of things. It's not true.
Yeah.
It is not true. So, and a lot of times data-driven people use indicators like the history predicts the future.
Mhm.
So if you've had a net profit for the last 10 years, does that mean you're going to have a net profit for year 11? Not necessarily.
Mm.
The best way to look at
or even 10 more years.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the best way to look at that is to look at the energy of the company.
Right.
But they don't look at that. They just look at the numbers, and the numbers don't tell you the energy. Now,
Right.
ironically, for business people or anybody else, we think data analysis, which is kind of it sounds like a very scary word, because a lot of people just, me included, our eyes glass over. If I was going to say, oh, Patricia, I want to tell you the data analysis. If I woke you up in the middle of the night and I said, sweetie, I want to tell you about the data analysis, you'd probably hit me, or at least be bored.
At least.
But the truth is that data analysis always is trying to get to understand the energy of a situation.
And for the most part, it never does.
It never does.
Yes.
It's much more direct to understand, okay, what's going on energetically. So,
right.
So let's keep going. Those indicators often don't work. Close relationship is where perspective is needed the most.
Mm.
And again, I'm using myself as an example, but so after my first wife died, I had just gotten out of the Army. I was a single dad. I felt like I was stupid. I had no idea what it was to be a parent, let alone a single parent. And
and by the way, I want to jump in and say he's actually done amazing with the information he had.
Right. And because I was looking, if I would have allowed my intuition to work,
yeah, it wouldn't have been that way. But
if I would have been a good parent if I just used my intuition.
Well, and that's what I meant.
Yeah,
that's what I meant.
Well, and there's two things here. So I found someone who was working on her PhD in child development, who worked with kids every day. That was my daughter's age. She was attracted to me, and she was never been married. So I figured, oh my gosh, this looks perfect. I didn't have the perspective because it was so far from perfect. What would you, anyways?
Don't ask me.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get a objective answer on that.
And it was a huge mistake. There was reasons why you could understand child development intellectually, but being a mother is a whole different ball of wax.
Absolutely.
And the two don't necessarily relate. I didn't have the perspective to understand that at the time.
Right.
And the fact that she'd never been married, I didn't, that I thought was a good thing, but it was actually there was a reason why that was.
Yes, exactly.
So, it just, I lacked perspective. And we're going to talk about how important it is to have perspective for all sorts of life decisions, small, large, all those things. Oh, well, one of the best examples is when we met, you had this one car. And whenever I mention the name of this car, she'll spit on the ground. And we literally drove it to the car dealer, and it stalled right in the parking lot.
Yes, it did.
And we got out and we never looked back.
One of the best decisions we ever made was a new car, meaning it and just leaving that one where it was.
Not only was it a new car, but the car we chose has been so good to us.
It has.
It never gets, there's never any problems, perspective.
Yes. Yes.
And so whether you're buying a car, you're getting married,
having children,
analyzing your finances,
correct. Yes.
Figuring out a way to parent your kids, perspective is really important.
So, Jason, what are the key points of this segment?
Perspective is not an intellectual ability. It comes from the ability to perceive energy. Perspective is always personal, and the greatest perspective comes from the connection with your essence. Those who look only to data come from a programming mindset have a very narrow perspective. It's not better, it's actually worse. And the ecosystem approach helps you develop your intuitive ability to read energy and to work from essence.
In the next segment, we're going to go into more detail about developing perspective for yourself that is personal and how to understand where the gaps are in your perspective. This is the Ecosystem Approach Show with Jason and Patricia, and you're listening to Transformation Talk Radio. This is the Ecosystem Approach Show with Jason, and I'm Patricia. And in this segment, we're going to go into more detail about developing perspective for yourself that is personal and how to understand where the gaps are in your perspective. We're married intuitives with over 20 years experience who created the Ecosystem Approach for you. This is much different because we see human beings as ecosystems that need to be restored instead of programmed. We show you how to take an energy approach for internal discovery that is rational, practical, and useful for everyday life. Jason, I'm still not clear about what you mean by perspective, that perspective is personal, and how to see the gaps in that. Can you explain?
Okay, so let's take an example first. Okay. Again, this is very egghead-like, but let's say you're an analyst for stocks and mutual funds.
Okay.
And if you're doing it for yourself, of course, it's personal to you. That analysis is based on, how you see the world. But if you're doing it for a company, it's still personal, because let's say, from your perspective, you want to help the company take a little bit more risk, and you think in doing so, it will make you look good on the job. So again, it relates back to you.
And especially if that risk pays off.
Yes, exactly. Or you could have it from another perspective and say, I'm going to help this conservative company be as conservative as they want and not take any risk, with the idea that that's going to pay off and help you with their perception of your job performance.
I was going to say, and security.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's always personal. Your perspective is always personal because it always relates back to you.
Right.
Now, here's the way I'm going to give you a method. Making perspective personal comes from knowing your Enneagram type. Now, for those of you that haven't been listening on a regular basis, your Enneagram type, the Enneagram is a personality typing system.
Correct.
And it goes from 1 to 9. One number is not better than another.
Correct.
But each one, it describes a type. And this type represents, and this is something that we see very clearly. It's not, if you go out there and start reading, you may not hear this exactly, but we see that your type, your Enneagram type, represents the negative energy attached to your essence.
Correct.
So that your perspective of the world, which is described by your Enneagram type, is limited by this negative energy.
Okay.
And here we go. We're going to go through each type and talk about how that works.
Okay.
Exactly. So we'll start with a 1. They have a search for perfection. Ones like perfection. Of course, it's impossible, and they never get there.
Because the perfection that they're looking for doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Okay.
A 2, they see the good in everyone, but they also tend to be gullible. Okay.
Yeah.
3s, telling people what they want to hear, but they lack their own perspective or their own solid set of, this is who I am and this is what I believe.
Okay.
4s, they understand their own perspective.
Right.
They're full of emotion and drama. This is how I feel, but they struggle to see other people's perspective.
Okay.
5s, they can figure out anything, but they often lack empathy.
In other words, they lack emotion.
Yes.
Okay.
They're very intellectually, they figure out things, but they lack emotion. The emotion for empathy.
Right.
6s, they're very good at supporting others, but they lack confidence for themselves.
Correct.
7s, they love activity, but they struggle with the detail. 8s, they seek to dominate and control, but they often lack softness and compassion. And 9s seek peace and harmony, but they lack self-advocacy.
Correct.
So let's bring it back, so if you know the Enneagram, you can really understand, first of all, your own type and how that affects your perspective.
Right.
I'm just starting to realize that I'm a 6 on the Enneagram, and that need for 6s struggle with self-confidence and the need for security. They have lots of fears.
Right.
That doesn't describe who I am authentically at all.
No.
It really has taken my who I am authentically and skewed it so that I don't see the world in a clear way.
Okay, objective way.
Now, you're a really good example. You're always a really good example, sweetie. So it's being a 4. 4s are emotional. They tend to be a little self-absorbed.
I have no idea what you mean.
And they're very expressive about those emotions constantly, but because they're always in their own emotions, they struggle to see people other people's perspective.
Yes.
In the moment, especially.
Yes.
And even if they know that they're emotional, they struggle to implement anything in a way that's not emotional.
In other words, not objective.
Exactly.
Okay.
And what we've been finding out, we've known this for a long time, but you're now you be able to implement it in a way that's it's almost like I've got a different life. Sometimes I have to I'm going to have to start carding you and
seeing. Don't I wish.
Yeah.
But the thing that's the most amazing, and I'm going to jump in, and I know it's going to come up in a few minutes, but how we did this was we started using the ecosystem approach. This is one of the reasons we started even to create the ecosystem approach, because we knew that we could change
this buildup of negative energy.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was, and by the way, it's been a journey. I admit right off the top, but I wouldn't go backwards and be the way that I used to be for any reason. And I'll just give him another name and he'll never know the difference.
Well, it's really amazing, because we both have been on this journey. So as we remove the negative energy from our Enneagram type,
correct,
our who we are authentically, which comes from the natal chart and astrology. That's what we're referring to.
It's starting to come forward in such a way that we're both going, wow, this is amazing.
And I've never been like this before. And now I can be, or I've been like this in little bits and pieces, in my life, but now it's all over the place.
And it feels really good to be in that.
Yes.
And notice I said feels really good. That's because my 4 is still part of my 4 is still there.
Yes.
And we're working on it. Let's just put it that way.
Well, it's when we can go out in the world and see these things with this greater perspective, it's really kind of exciting.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about that in the next segment.
Mhm.
What we see now that we have this greater perspective because we've been releasing ourselves from the bonds. It's almost like
That's a really good way to put that. I like
it's
that.
a confined,
Yes.
a confinement.
I would call it a trap.
Yes. From our Enneagram type
Mhm.
to who we are authentically. It's
true.
amazing.
Yes, yes, yes.
So when you see your own Enneagram type and you start to see, okay, that limits my perspective, and then you start to understand other people's Enneagram type, when they come together, you can kind of understand where the gaps are. So when let's say you're going to work and you know that someone else has a different Enneagram type than you can kind of see where your perspective and their perspective aren't lining up.
Yeah.
Which happens all the time.
Correct.
Even in your own family, you can see where
True.
Someone right next to you, a sibling, has a much different perspective than you do.
Well, and because of the ecosystem approach, I have been able to actually see that. But before I started it, meaning the ecosystem approach, I just thought, oh, well, everything's
That's
just
the way it is.
the way it is. Exactly.
It's such a different way of viewing the
Well,
world.
and it's a different perspective because I was trained, no matter what, my perspective was wrong and
Yes.
everybody else's was
Yes.
the right way. And when I finally realized that with asking for some objectivity through the ecosystem approach, wow, it's really helped me with, and I want to say power, but it's helped me stand true in myself.
So
That's really been huge.
It is really huge. Let's talk about business again for just a minute.
Sure.
You have a greater perspective on a business if you know the Enneagram type of the business.
Right.
And that usually starts with the owner or the founder or the
Correct.
partners or whoever started the business. And then look at how it feels.
Right.
And that's how we type people. We type people because we really understand the Enneagram well.
Right.
But each Enneagram type has a feel.
Yes, it does.
So there are Enneagram types that are similar. So we usually can feel the difference from different Enneagram
and sometimes
types.
it is a fine line, I will admit, and we'll have to question, oh, is that right? Is that not right? But the bottom line is that we can walk into any group, anywhere, anytime, and know where we stand.
Yes.
And it's pretty interesting.
Well, people gravitate to numbers for analysis, especially
Yes,
about
they do.
business,
Yes.
but it doesn't tell the story. A better way to understand it. Now, I understand. I know some of you are thinking, well, I still have to know what my net profit is and my gross profit.
Well, of course you do.
I have to have those measurements.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
But if you want to know what that means, look to the energy.
Yeah.
You have to know what the energy says. And data analysis at its core is an attempt to understand the energy of a business.
Yes.
Go direct and look at the energy. And whether it's a big company, a small company, it doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
It both applies.
Exactly. So, Jason, what are the key points of this segment?
Perspective is always personal because it always relates back to you personally.
Yes.
The Enneagram is a great tool as a starting point for determining perspective for yourself and others. And analyzing numbers and metrics at the root is to determine the energy of a situation. Look at the energy directly.
Yes.
And the ecosystem approach is designed to help everyone know their own perspective and to see others in an objective way.
Okay. In the next segment, we're going to talk about things you can do to have a greater perspective and how that greater perspective can change your life in a profound way. This is the Ecosystem Approach Show with Jason and Patricia. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio. This is the Ecosystem Approach Show with Jason, and I'm Patricia. And in this segment, we're going to talk about things you can do to have a greater perspective and how that greater perspective can change your life in a profound way. We are married intuitives with over 20 years experience who created the Ecosystem Approach for you. This is much different because we see human beings as ecosystems that need to be restored instead of programmed. We show you how to take an energy approach for internal discovery that is rational, practical, and useful for everyday life. Okay, Jason, how can the audience start to have greater perspective about their lives, about who they are, that sort of thing?
Well, using the ecosystem approach, and that's almost sounds trite,
Yes.
but the truth is that all of our shows, when we talk about these concepts,
Mhm.
the things that we talk about are byproducts of
Yeah.
implementing the ecosystem approach. And it's such a different perspective,
Correct.
because, for example, one of the things that always gets me worked up is, people are talking about activating the idea of gratitude,
Yeah. Okay.
and and it's not that that's bad, but we don't ever activate the idea of gratitude because it comes out of us naturally
There you go.
because we've been applying the
It's
ecosystem
true.
approach.
And that's true.
We're very grateful about each other for our relationship,
Yes.
our life together, but we don't try and activate gratitude. If you have to try, there's something wrong. There's
Well,
something blocking you.
well, I was going to say there's something standing in the way. And that's one of the things that we've learned is, and of course, then our intuition has really blossomed for both of us. But we've learned through the ecosystem approach that if there's something blocking you, remove it. And even if you don't quite understand all of it, remove it,
So-
and you will have greater clarity.
So simply put, this is how you do it.
Okay.
Know your Enneagram type.
Right.
Know how it relates to your emotional story.
Correct.
Again, if you haven't heard this before, your emotional story is not what happened to you during your life, but how you felt about it.
Yeah.
And then all these things together, your Enneagram type and your emotional story, that represent the negative energy attached to you.
Correct.
So as you start clearing that, those are the things that interfere with your perspective.
Correct.
About everything.
Yeah.
Relationships, health, money, your business, all those things. So all your problems are the result of blocks to your perspective based on your Enneagram type. So to overcome those blocks, when you know your emotional story, you can clear it. Sounds awfully simplistic, but it's really powerful. It's much more difficult in practice to implement. We understand.
Yes.
But when you clear it constantly, consistently, and specifically, oh my gosh.
Well, and I'm going to jump in and say, you and I have been able to come up with a form of a routine regarding clearing as a team.
Yes.
Together.
Yes.
And it's so nice. I get a cup of coffee, he has tea, and we talk about
in the morning.
And we talk about
quiet time. Yes.
It is, and we talk about what's happening and what's going to happen for the day and what is blocking us from doing the things that we need and want to do.
And often there's a lot of clearing involved in that. And
yes,
it's a very tender time. We connect. There's an intimacy that we have. People say, oh, you have such a great relationship. Well, it's because that we have that intimacy that is being fostered daily.
Yes.
Because we remove the stuff that's keeping us from that intimacy.
Well, and I had a client tell me the other day that he and his wife, they don't always get to, but he and his wife, they don't have that time in the morning. They're doing go, 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 go. And so they use dinner time.
Oh, sure.
To do the clearing. And by the way, their relationship is healthy and strong. And like they said, nothing's perfect, but they look forward to that time.
Well, that's how you solve problems. But I'm going to make a big statement.
Okay.
So fasten your seatbelt. All the problems you've had in your life, all the problems, were the result of your limited perspective, especially about yourself.
And I can say for me, absolutely.
I mean, and then here's another big statement. Okay. As we go out in the world, or all the problems or challenges you're likely to have in the future are going to be the result of limited perspective.
Correct.
So we're saying, especially about yourself, so what we're saying is that if you want to minimize the problems and challenges you have in the future, or your ability to solve those problems and challenges, if you start applying the ecosystem approach right now,
yes,
you can start to gain that perspective that you need to live your life in a better way.
Yes.
And that's why we do this this show every week.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we put this information out there. And if you think this, if you're saying, oh my gosh, I got to have this, go to our website right now, theecosystemapproach.org. Sign up for our free section. It'll be amazing. There's a lot of content there. You'll get a weekly printout of the clearings, which we're going to do in the next segment. And you start to have your perspective broadened starting right now.
Well, and I just want to say, some people have said to me, well, that show really didn't apply to me, or those clearings don't apply to me. And what would you say to that, Jason?
And that's probably because you're limited perspective. And we know that any kind of clearing helps you because it touches something. Now, the way it touches me might be different than the way it touches you.
Sure.
And if you're listening right now, the way it touches you might be a little bit different than some of the other people next to you. But there's always something. Yes.
And removing negative energy, you're not only helping you, you're helping, I'm going to say, your entire household. And if you live by yourself, it'll help the cat, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Exactly. But the other thing that it does is, we know that there is so much pollution, and I'm actually talking about the environmental pollution in the world as well. There's so much of it, but when you start clearing you and removing negative energy, putting it into the processor, and Jacob's going to put that up in a few minutes, what you find is that you are actually doing something that matters, not only to you, but to the rest of the world.
So when we go out in the world, after we've been doing the ecosystem approach for all this time,
yes,
it's been over 20 years, our perspective is amazing. We can see people that, oh, that person's going to get sick.
Yeah.
That person's trying to find a way out from this life.
Right.
That person is really struggling, and we don't ever predict the future, but we can see the trend for them is negative, not positive.
Yes.
We see that all the time.
Right.
And it's very valuable. It's very valuable for us in terms of our own stuff. It doesn't necessarily remove problems, but problems that come up, we just handle them.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. But it gives us a perspective in order to see what to do in certain situations that, I mean, are
that we never would have seen. We never have seen before.
Exactly.
So that perspective in terms of solving problems is amazing.
It really, really, really is.
And it's very effective.
Very much so. And by the way, we have several people that'll come to us and say, I can't see this. What do you see? And that's great. It happens all the time. But what we want for you, the audience out there and the rest of the world, we want you to be able to do what we do for yourself, because that's the way the energy was intended to be fixed in the beginning anyway.
And I love that, because what we're saying to you is that we're talking about the health of your essence, your soul.
Yes.
And you can't ever delegate that to someone else.
No.
You can't go to an expert and say, fix my soul. You have to do it yourself. It's a very personal journey. It's very, very important that you know how, and you do it yourself.
Well, and the other thing that I see, and yes, it's probably because I'm a 4, but the bottom line is there is such a satisfaction in knowing I made a difference in my life today.
Yes.
I mean, wow.
Well, and that's because that's how we're designed.
That is how
we're designed to work from our essence. We're designed to use our soul for support.
Right.
So
Jason, let's do the key points and then tell everyone how to do the clearing.
Yeah, that sounds
okay. Good. So Jason, what are the key points?
Greater perspective comes from knowing your Enneagram type and your emotional story. All the problems you've had come from your lack of perspective about you and others and the world.
Right.
There are problems in your future that are completely unnecessary if you expand your perspective now. And the ecosystem approach teaches you how to put it all together and start expanding your perspective today.
I love that. So Jason, can you explain to everyone how to do the clearing?
So it's very, very simple. Your posture doesn't matter. You don't have to be in a reverent position. It's not like what you're doing is you're removing negative energy.
Yes.
And it's not like a religious
So I recommend
approach.
Don't sit on top of the processor in your mind.
Yes.
Put it off to your left. We know that negative energy moves easier to the left, and start from there.
So you can sit, stand, walk,
Mhm.
lay down. It doesn't matter, and just start clearing.
Mhm.
And um, um, it's as simple as when we say to eliminate,
Mhm.
whatever we say to eliminate, barriers, veils and illusions, specific emotions, anger, fear. Just take up those emotions
Pick them
and
up.
gather them in your mind's eye, in your imagination, and then blow them into that processor.
And
just take a gentle breath. You don't need to, a bigger breath
yeah,
doesn't
no
move.
hyperventilating.
Yeah,
Remember, we don't know where you are, so
yes.
that doesn't make it easier. The other, and by the way, hyperventilating or taking huge breaths does not make a difference. It's about your intention that matters. The next thing that we're going to do right after that is we're going to activate life force energy. Life force energy is the most powerful energy that any of us on this planet has access to. And what we're going to do is we're going to call it in. We're going to have it come in through the top of our head. We're going to let it go all the way through our body, and we're going to stop it at the tips of our toes. We don't want that negative energy going into the earth. There's enough of that. What we want is to turn that negative energy around and let it go, come back up our body, and use our breath to blow it into the processor, because that's the best place that it can be. So with that said, stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to help you so you can begin to have a greater perspective for yourself in all areas of your life. This is the Ecosystem Approach Show with Jason and Patricia, and you're listening to Transformation Talk Radio. This is the Ecosystem Approach Show with Jason, and I'm Patricia. And in this segment, we're going to help you clear so you can begin to have a greater perspective for yourself in all areas of your life. Jason, ready?
So here we go. We're going to do the clearing. This is what it's like. Just, if you don't think it applies to you, it's not going to hurt you. Yes. So just do it along. If you're driving or something, just do it along. Just take the breaths with us. And
exactly.
People say that we go too fast.
Right.
And we probably do, because
that's a good reason.
Yes, to go to our website right now, the
yes.
Ecosystem Approach, and sign up for our free section, because all the clearings are there, and you can do them for the rest of the week, and then until our next show, and we'll have a new set. It's
really kind of cool the way we've set it up, I think. So go ahead.
So here we go. I direct all my resources in all dimensions to eliminate the barriers, so I can see that perspective is intuitive and its source is your essence or your soul. Take a breath. And
I know Jacob's putting up the picture of the processor right now. We're going to shorten it just a little bit. And to eliminate the barriers, so I can see that being able to perceive energy and use your intuition really helps your perspective. Nice and easy. Take a breath and blow out any negative energy that's blocking you from seeing your perspective and understanding the ability to perceive energy. So, Jason?
And to eliminate the intense feelings of worry, anxiety, and stress that I have that interferes with my perspective and the way I see my life.
Yes. Take a breath.
You'd be amazed at how just stress interferes with having a good perspective of what's going on with you, so you can fix it.
Exactly.
So you can clear it.
Exactly. So, and to eliminate any feelings of fear and hurt and shame that comes from essence that interferes with my personal perspective. Take a breath, nice and easy.
And to eliminate the barrier, so I can see that focusing on data and metrics only reduces my perspective.
And it actually limits it. Take a breath.
And if anybody's out there screaming because you've been taught all your life that data and metrics are everything, put that resistance and just put in the processor right now.
And even that resentment. Yes. Take a breath. Okay. And to eliminate the veils and illusions, so I can see that the left brain is a completely logical approach to data, reduces my perspective. Take a breath. And I find that interesting that one ended up being mine. Anyway, go ahead. Yes.
And to eliminate the veils and illusions, so I can see that left brain.
We just did.
Yeah, okay. And to eliminate any feelings of fear and terror that I have that limits my perspective and covers solutions that could help me.
Yes.
Fear and terror are really perspective reducing.
Yeah, very much so. Take a breath.
We have people come to us, all the time and say,
Right.
oh my God, this thing's happening to me. And they're
Right.
terrified.
Exactly.
And so what is the first thing we do? We clear the fear and terror so they can have a greater perspective. It's amazing.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and to eliminate the barriers, so I can see that I have to understand my emotional story and how it reduces my perspective, but I can use the ecosystem approach to help myself through the whole thing. Take a breath.
And to eliminate any intense resentment I have because I lacked perspective in the past and made mistakes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Good one. And to eliminate any resistance I have to seeing that intuition and essence can be valuable for an amazing perspective. Take a breath.
And to eliminate the veils and illusions so I can see that developing my perspective now can prevent struggles, hardship, and difficulties in the future, which is the best insurance for a better life for me. OMG.
Take a breath. And to eliminate the barriers so I can see that my Enneagram type shows me the limits and the pitfalls to my perspective. And by the way, for me, that was one of the biggest things. I resisted it for a long time, but wow, did it make a difference when I finally went, oh, get rid of it. Take a breath.
Yes. And to eliminate the veils and illusions so I can see that my emotional story can blind me to important perspectives.
That's huge. And to eliminate the veils and illusions so I can see that using the ecosystem approach is the ultimate way to develop my perspective. And I'm going to put this in there so I can be happy and healthy and enjoy my life starting right now. Take a breath.
People come to us all the time and say some form of, how do you have so much energy? How are you doing so well? How's your relationship so great? How come this and this and this? But they don't want to hear the answer.
I know.
They want their perspective is so limited. They can't conceive of what we're trying to tell them. So if some part of you gets this right now, oh my gosh, stay tuned. We're just going to get to it in just a minute. We'll tell you how to get signed up and what to do.
And join us.
Yes,
by all means. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to activate that life force energy. Remember, the most powerful energy that any of us has access to. And we need this to fill in the spots where the negative energies were that we were just clearing, so that that life force energy can help us and be in the places where it should be anyway. And it goes like this. I direct all my resources in all dimensions to activate life force energy so I can have clarity, awareness, and objectivity, but also be happy and healthy and know that the ecosystem approach is the best way for me to get the things that I need and want in my life. Nice and easy. Pull it in. Let it go all the way to your toes. Remember, it's filling up where that negative energy was. Now we're going to blow out any negative energy that's left over because there's so much. Take a breath.
And activate life force so I can have hope to have a vision or perspective in my life that is greater than I ever imagined.
And by the way, that's one of my favorite things. Take a breath, everybody. Pull it in and blow out any negative energy left over. Remember, you're the one that's in charge here. And to activate life force so I can trust that using my intuition and essence can create perspective that is really useful for my everyday life. Take a breath, pull it in, and blow out any negative energy.
And to activate life force so I can decide to focus my attention on my emotional story to develop my abilities to create amazing perspective. It's your emotional story that always gets in your way.
Yes, take a breath. And the last one, and to activate life force so I can be happy and healthy, have laughter and love of myself, and know that the ecosystem approach is the way to take care of me and my life in my highest and best interest, starting right now. Nice and easy. Pull it in. Stop it at the tips of your toes, turn it around, and blow out any negative energy. Jason, what are we going to talk about next week?
Saving money. Now, we've been focusing on these really high, perspective is kind of a philosophical, saving money. We're talking about maybe we're going into recession, maybe we're not. We've got a lot of inflation. We can't spend the way we used to. Why is it so hard?
Yeah.
And so this is very practical. This is very usable for everyday life. There are a lot of strategies and techniques out there.
Yes.
If you go to a financial manager, they can show you exactly what to do to save money. But most people can't do it.
No, they can't maintain it.
They can't maintain it.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about what those reasons are.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
And how to overcome those.
Yes.
Because I guarantee you, it's not about how to do it. It's about the emotions and the energies that are blocking you
from taking action.
Yes.
Yes. I love that. So,
I'm really excited because we have an opportunity to offer this to you to have greater perspective in your life. And if you were if I was to summarize what the world needs right now, everybody in the world is a greater perspective about who they are, what they want, where they're going, and how to get it in a way that makes sense.
Yes.
We've done that with the ecosystem approach.
Okay.
It's radical. It's so much different than anything else that's out there right now, because it takes us back to our roots.
Yeah.
It takes us back to our essence, our soul, in a way that is practical and able to be implemented. And you don't have to dye your hair a funny color or stand upside down or wear a special outfit that denotes that you're part of this group. It's none of that. It's an internal process that takes you back to the way you were designed in a way that is very, very powerful. And so how do you do that?
I was just going to ask you, Jason, how can myself and the audience make the ecosystem approach a bigger part of their lives?
We've made it really simple for you. The first thing is listen to our show every week. It's recorded. It's recorded on YouTube. It's recorded on Facebook. You can see the video there. We're also have it it's in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and so many other outlets that too numerous to mention. So you can listen every week. It's not that hard, and you do it on your time. Do it when it's convenient for you.
Correct.
And then go to our website, theecosystemapproach.org. theecosystemapproach.org. It's all one word just smashed together. And sign up for our free section. You can see Patricia's pictures on the front page there, and looking pretty and looking excited about this perspective that she has. And sign up for our free section. You get all this content, but mostly what's really important, you get a weekly newsletter. I write about the topic every week. It's just a few paragraphs. And then we have the clearings written out and a picture of the processor. It's right there.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Put them on their phone so they can do it. The more you clear, the more the results are. It's cumulative.
It's amazing. And I'm going to suggest, come join us, everyone. We can really help you make your life better.
So go to our Facebook page too, theecosystemapproach.org, and like us while you're there. We really appreciate that.
Okay. We'll connect next week, Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific and 4 p.m. Eastern Time. This is Transformation Talk Radio, and you're listening to the Ecosystem Approach Show with Jason and Patricia.
Remember, your ecosystem is the most important one in the world.
Thank you for listening to the Ecosystem Approach Show with Jason and Patricia. I'm Patricia. Tune in every week as we discuss practical ways to apply the ecosystem approach and develop your potential to live your life on your terms. For more information, visit our website at theecosystemapproach.org.